Welcome, everyone. I'm Laura DeFranco, the CEO of Brave Healer Productions, where we have a mission to wake the world up to what's possible for healing, one brave word at a time. And here today to help me with that mission are a couple of the amazing authors of a new book that we have out now called Dreaming with Bees, Sacred Medicine from Beyond the Veil of Grief. I gotta love this book cover. Oh my goodness. Before I introduce Lauren and Kristin to you today, huge thank you to Dasha Bond, who is the lead author of Dreaming with Bees. Dasha, you had such a beautiful, big vision and mission for this book, and you gathered around you the most amazing, stellar group of co-authors who are really stepping up with vulnerable stories and beautiful medicine. I'm so grateful to you. We wouldn't be here without you. So I wanted to put those words into this interview first. I'm sure I speak for all of the authors with a huge thank you to Dasha. So Lauren Russell is with us today. She's a licensed counselor with over 15 years experience as a therapist and intuitive guide who helps her clients heal through therapeutic guided experiences. And we have Kristin Clark here. She's an award-winning fine artist, singer-songwriter, and certified dream coach. Oh my goodness, I can't wait to hear all of the juicy things you're here to tell us. Kristin, let's start the party with you. Tell us about your amazing chapter.
Well, my chapter is called Safe in the World, Heal Ancestral Trauma and Free Your Magical Child. So it's really about healing my dad's trauma. And through dreams, night dreams, and imagination and shamanic journey, going into the time that he was wounded as a baby, as a little boy. And I show up as healing agent in these different scenarios, the ones that I knew about, and offer him the love that he didn't have at that time, and sort of through that open up to divine love to just spread a blanket of love and healing over the abuse that he suffered. And so in doing that, I feel like my magical child, who is she's the queen of imagination, through her wisdom and guidance, she was there with me as I went into these different times with my dad when he was hurt. And it also allowed me to really heal her. Once I went in and these moments felt healed with my dad, she came forward more in my field as an aspect of me that is with me on a daily basis, whispering in my ear to be kind, to be imaginative, to play, to listen to the trees and the wind, and just to really have that open, pure heart that children do.
Oh gosh, I think so. Let's say somebody is listening today who is curious but doesn't know a lot about, I'll call it ancestral healing for now. I want you to comment on this opportunity they have for deeper a deeper healing in their family line. What do you want someone to know about that?
Well, I was listening to a podcast recently, Tara Brach, and she talked about the freedom of a forgiving heart. So, what happens when our parents are traumatized and they try to love us, but they traumatize us, and then we think we're going to be better and we still pass things down? It's in the line, right? Is that we're not loving fully, we're not present. Our nervous systems are all jacked up and we're just in a lot of ways unconscious. So what happened with me is that you can't jump to this because you can't force a forgiving heart. You have to you've got to meet the pain and the loss and the grief of being unloved or being abused. And that's got anger and rage and all those things. So once you've worked through that and you've got to a point where you feel safe and strong enough, for me, when my dad was dying, I just did it naturally. I thought, there's this opportunity to do this yet while he's alive, even though he can't really connect with me anymore on a conscious level. But I began entering in imagination into these scenarios where I just imagined him being loved where he was unloved and free where he was not freed, and the life that he lived that was really in victim consciousness because of his traumatic past. So I just feel like once you've done the work, then this part is really fun. And this is like, to me, it's a level of freedom that it's there beyond facing the grief and the pain that is necessary to walk through. But it's like imagination is real, right? The greater the imagination, the less imaginary the results. That's a Rabindranath Tagore quote, right? So what we spend our time focusing on and thinking of and imagining absolutely is brought into our conscious world and can heal things throughout the lines, forwards and backwards. I really believe that.
Such beautiful, powerful work. All right, I'm going to rewind to something you said that really I had to pause for a moment. Our jacked up nervous systems. So here I am, and I want to be better, and maybe I am having some signs of that. Help me with how to know and when to pause, and what's that first step of awareness if that is you and you've got a little bit of a jacked up nervous system.
Well, we've all had to do so much work on this, but as a singer and bringing my songs forward into the world, that nervous system was triggered just like with the most tremendous terror. I wanted so badly to share these songs that came through for healing, and from the helping spirits. I didn't know how to write songs, but it came through with a desire to heal and to love and return to joy. But then to share them, the nervous system just would go haywire, where it was like falling into a pit of shame is what it felt like. It just was like, I can't, I'm not worthy. And I had no recourse, nothing to hold on to. I just fell into this pit. So it's been a long process, but really what I've learned is I cannot reject that piece that's coming up saying, I'm scared. I'm actually terrified and I don't want to. I want to just hide. But we also know that that's just the fear talking, because really what we want is to love and be loved and to uplift the world and to have some fun while we're doing it. So I would say be gentle, really listen. I sometimes imagine those pieces as my little wounded one. And I am now, I'm mature and wise and healed enough to show up as the divine mother for her as much as I can. And if I can't, then I feel like it's my job to just let it be seen. We all have jacked up nervous systems, and it's helpful when I see someone else working through it, as opposed to when I see someone who looks like they've got it all together and I feel like I could never be that. They're so cool and I'm so beneath them. So I think sometimes for me, even in the concerts, I'm being asked to show up terrified, let the fear burn off in front of everyone, which is not what I want. I want to appear like I've got my shit together and I'm a wise woman and I know it. But sometimes that's what is asked of me so that we can all feel our feelings and just, we're not healed at the end of the day, but we have a lighter understanding of the wounds that the healing does get deeper and deeper, and then we're able to be more present with each other.
I love that so much. I love, sometimes I'm being asked to show up terrified. Yes, I feel that. Kristin, thank you so much for being here. Thanks for saying yes to the project and sharing this beautiful wisdom today.
Thank you so much, Laura.
Lauren, tell us about your amazing chapter.
Yeah. So my chapter is called Homebody, Lost and Found, using the sensory wisdom of plants to guide us home. And, I wrestled with the title for a while, wanting it to be something centered around home, because my chapter is very much about the loss of home as a child, and then learning how to return home to not only the literal home outside my body, but the home inside my body. And so as I was writing this story, the theme of, the plants and the plant world kept coming up and started to weave into the story. And I recognized in a very deep way during the writing process of how much the plant kingdom has been a part of my compass of what's guided me back home. And so the story itself is just a snapshot from when I was young, about whenever I was removed from my own home, my familial home, and what that was like for my nervous system, my body, my spiritual body, my emotional body, and how it was not through, I mean, people and human beings have been a part of the healing journey, but truly my interaction with the natural world, with plants, was what helped me come home. Of being able just to be in communion with, a blade of grass, to be in communion with the shade of a tree, and to feel the comfort and the awe and the beauty, and to have those experiences with plants ignite that same sensation within my own body and remind me that my body could feel something more than detachment or fear or terror. It's like, oh, it can feel beauty, it can feel wonder, it can feel awe. And so the journey of having plants guide me back home has been like going back to the part of me that was just an infant, the infant part inside, the one that just is like grabbing at her toes and like gripping the grass and just discovering the world around her. Like upon birth, when we're in this world, like that's how we discover the world, is from what's around us. And for me, people weren't safe for a long time, and it was through plants that I learned safety, or through the natural world. So that is the reason why that chapter got the name. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, coming back home, grounded and centered in this body, is so foundational, to healing and
Mm-hmm.
to awareness, and to, I think, living a super awesome, juicy life. What's the most important thing you want people to know about why they should want to be in there?
Why they should want to be in their bodies and
Yeah, and
in
be home, like no matter how you connect to it.
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So for me, that has been the place, like coming home is where I have felt most whole. It is the place that we can be most attuned to the subtle sensory experience of this life. When we're safe, we can experience life, we can experience connection. We know how to register what is good for us or not. We know how to play. In my world, in the work that I do with therapy and in parts work, and parts work is about, working with all of the different inner components of the psyche and the spiritual life that we have internally. And, with all of those different parts, they have different needs and they tell us different things. With the child parts, I witness this also just in life. I witness it in my own child and in my own experience, that when children feel their parameter is safe, that's when they can drop into play. When children or our own inner child, when we don't feel like our perimeter is safe, or that our home is somewhere that we can be, we don't play. We look outside of ourselves. We get hyper vigilant. We step away from our intuitive, playful needs, and we start scanning the horizons for threat, and we end up self-abandoning. And so when we can, whatever tools we can use to help us come back home to our body, because at the end of the day, our body is the home that we'll have until our last breath, we can really connect with all the parts of ourselves, especially the ones that are playful and intuitive and sensitive, the ones that I think are what we really need to create a world that is going to be more loving for all beings.
You just made me think about this in a different way. Like even just asking the listeners right now, can you play, like as a litmus test for safety for, I mean, adults and kids, right? Like, yeah, the aha for me is, as an adult, there is that too. Like if I can play, I'm feeling safe with everything around me, especially if there's people in the room.
Yeah.
What else do you want to tell us about that?
Yeah, so in play is where we learn and grow. I mean, if any of us have had kids or watched kids, like that is where they learn who they are. That is where we learn who we are. That's where we get to make, like, experiment, make mistakes, and learn what doesn't work and what works. And we do it, and it creates that knowing from a place that is really deeply embedded within our wisdom knowing, our gnosis, Gnosis, versus like the real heady knowing that comes from what we're told to do, being told, people pleasing, let me do what authority says. When we play, we create an innate knowing of like what works and what doesn't for us. And so it embeds this really strong sense of self. And when we have a really strong sense of self, we're creating a world and we're creating a heartbeat within ourselves that, you know, everything that resonates out from that creates something more authentic. Our relationships become more authentic. How we show up in the world is more authentic. And so for me, playfulness, and that isn't always, you know, that shows up in many different ways. You know, for me, I'm also a creative person. And so whenever that's to use the term litmus test, you know, whenever I feel disconnected from my art, disconnected from, you know, my expression, that's for me, it's like, oh, something in my world is not feeling secure. And when I have created, and so I'm like, I need to create the space for me to like play and create again. And that's when I know I've created security. And here's the thing too, is like, I think it's important to create that for ourselves because the world at large doesn't guarantee that. The world at large doesn't guarantee like safety in all aspects. Like it's not necessarily supposed to be, but that is like what we create for each other. That is like the message of the heart for me, and like the one of the purposes of being heart-centered beings is to create that for ourselves and each other, because it's not guaranteed out there. And yet that is how we create, that is how we envision a world, is from a heart-centered place. And to play, to me, helps us come back to that heart language.
Lauren, thank you so much for saying yes to this and for sharing your wisdom, your beautiful wisdom today as well. You guys, Dreaming with Bees, Sacred Medicine from Beyond the Veil of Grief.
Mm.
So, Lauren, I'm going to stick with you for this other question today. What's the most important thing you want our listeners to understand about grief, about the process?
Yeah. Grief is something that isn't to be run away from. You know, the grief and joy to me are on the same sphere. You know, they coexist together. One begets the other. And that it's tricky to talk about sometimes in linear language, because it's not like, oh, I wish grief upon people. But it's more to me from a view of like, it's inherent. It is inherent to living here. The very act of being a baby and leaving our mother's body is a moment of grief, you know? And it's like that grief, leaving that warmth and the safety of that space, coming into the awareness of a world that's colder and less warm, finding our voice to cry out and say, hold me, or I'm hungry. That all, you know, and then being responded to with love and warmth, or not. Maybe sometimes our lesson is learning that we didn't get that. And the grief of knowing that we didn't get that teaches us how to seek joy. So for me, you know, grief is one of those things that, while deeply painful, it is a map towards deeper joy. And, you know, there is a book that I really love. It's called The Smell of Rain on Dust. If you've ever heard of that. And it really goes into that paradigm about how grief and joy are one and the same, and that they are not to be run from, because when you run from grief, you run from joy. And for me, that's the most important thing that I want people to know, is that there is joy found through and out the other side, the veil of grief.
I love that, Lauren. Thank you. Kristin, how about you? What's that thing you want to add or you want people to know about grief?
Well, I really agree with what Lauren said. And it's funny, I just wrote a poem on this on Facebook 2 days ago because the grief was coming up for me. And I just think grief is love, right? So if we're loving, we're grieving. because this life is impermanent. Everything's temporary. Everything dies. Everything comes into this realm and leaves it in such an ephemeral way. But I would rather feel that grief than run and feel numbed out to life. And our culture says, no, 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 quick, don't feel that stuff. You don't have to. You can take this, that, or the other thing. And I'm not saying that you need those things sometimes to get through. But for me, I've done enough work where when I feel that coming up, I know I resisted at first, and then I say, okay, I'm going to be stuck here, like feeling numb and avoidance, just building pressure until I meet grief face to face with love, right? With love and compassion, that we are here, that we have said yes to this, and we have said yes to loving everything on this planet and beyond in all the realms. And nothing is certain, and everything moves away and fades away and is reborn. And it's just this cycle that we've agreed to, and that I want to enter fully. So it's just something, it's something to be fully embraced. And I agree. It's once you do, the enchanted mirror of that is joy. It is just like a hair's breadth of difference between them. In fact, when something gets me laughing hysterically hard, my husband says, "You've got funny wiring, honey." It's like a little trap door opens and I'm now wailing in grief. And, and then I'll look at myself and I'll be like, oh, wow. And then I'll go back and I'll laugh and I'll feel this joy. And then all of a sudden I'll go back through the door and it's grief and sorrow, but it's such a release. I'm alive. To be fully alive is the thing that I so often seek, because we get shut down and I start resisting everything. But the more we go out, the more we understand and we remember that resistance is futile.
So this is such big potato stuff today, ladies. Like, if we're grieving, we are loving, you guys. I think that is a beautiful, beautiful summary. Oh my goodness. Kristin Clark, Lauren Russell, thank you both so much for what you do in the world. And thank you for being here today to share it with everyone.
Thank you so much, Laura.
Yeah.
And congratulations on Dreaming
Yes.
with Bees.
Yes.
We're a #1 bestseller in several categories. It's been an incredible journey for this beautiful bee medicine to be out in the world, you guys. And this is way more than a book. I want you to drop down into the show notes. I have Kristin and Lauren hooked up with their sites down below. Explore what they're doing in the world. It is a lot and it is amazing. And hop over to Amazon and grab your copy of this beautiful book today. Lastly, everyone, remember, your words change the world when you're brave enough to share them. So it is time to be brave. See you next time, everyone.